Okay, the next short step is to install the upper bearing out of the kit. It includes the horn sounding track in brass, a rubber jacket around it, and a soldered on a horn wire with a terminal on the end. I spray a little bit of silicone spray around the rubber, like so. Slide the wire in there and watch for it to come out right here, down about 14 inches. Push the rubber in the top by hand. Take a little block of wood, lay it right on the surface of it and tap lightly. It goes right up to the shoulder, keeping the brass electrical track away from the mast jacket. Now I have a wire sticking out the bottom here. Because I ship these around the world and around the country, depending upon where they come from, I take this up with a little bit of wire, just so that, a little bit of masking tape, so that it won't get caught on something and break off. Okay, now I'm going to install the two roller bearing races, the new races, one into the upper end of the steering gearbox housing and the other one into the end adjusting cap. So I will take my set of drivers and disassemble the unit that I used before. Set up a driver that's the right diameter for the bearing race. Okay, now we have the race for the upper bearing. I've made up my little driver kit like so. Place it on there. Put it into the housing and center it up so that the handle sticks out here in the very middle of the thing. I'm going to stand like this because I'm right-handed, and I'm going to drive this in place. Listen to the sounds and how they change when the race reaches the upper end where it's supposed to be. You notice those last three blows resulted in a much louder pitch noise, indicating that the race had gone all the way and seated into the race receiver like it's supposed to. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the adjustable end cap here. I'm going to take the race for that. Incidentally, keep in mind, these races can be put in backwards. You have to put them in such a way that when they're installed, the roller bearing will fit in there like so. If you were to accidentally put it in like this, of course, you won't be able to put your roller bearing in. So keep in mind, both the one that I just installed and this one have to be open side toward the worm gear. So I place that on a very firm surface like this one here, which goes right down into the concrete. Put my tool on there. And it makes actually a little different sound when it finally reaches home there and it rests against the shoulder. There it is, all the way ready to be reassembled. Okay, we're ready to install the two needle bearings. Once again, I've rigged my pusher tool up so that it fits properly into there to make a tool to drive the thing in. If you'll notice, there's two widths of needle bearings, wide and narrow. The narrow one goes into the side cover. The wide one goes into the steering gearbox here where the sector shaft comes out. If you look closely at the needle bearings, you'll notice that one side of it is flat faced. There's relatively flat face on it, and the other end is rounded. They make that so that you can place a driver tool in, and the driver tool will rest up against the flat face. It's made that way so that when you drive it in, after it's already installed, you can still reach in and move the needle bearings. If you drive it in with the wrong end of the needle bearing, the rounded end, it may crush the end of this stainless steel housing and lock up the needle bearings where they cannot roll. So be sure you always drive it in using the flat face of the needle bearing up against your pusher tool. We're going to install that into the end of the housing right here. I'm going to come around and see this. So I place it here, once again, with the flat face up against my driver. I'm going to drive it in. Just past where the seal needs to go. There it is. There's a shoulder in there that the seal will go up against the shoulder. The needle bearing goes just past that and lines up even with that little shoulder. And if you'll notice, I can still turn my needle bearings with my finger. They rotate around just like that, so the needle bearings have not been damaged. Here's the needle bearing for the side cover. Same thing. It has a flattened face over here. I put the pusher tool against the flat face and drive it down in there until it's just below the chamfer. There's a chamfer, which means a taper, that's been turned in this hole. The taper's down on each side of this needle bearing, and you want to go in until the needle bearing is just at the bottom of that chamfer. And notice, once again, I can move my needle bearings. They will turn with my finger inside there, showing you that they're free to turn. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to repair the face of the side cover and the face of the steering gearbox to make sure that they seal well with a big flat single cut mill file. So we're merely dressing any burrs and imperfections off of the face of the side cover, like so, laying it down flat against the face where the gasket's going to go, and remove the high spots. And you'll see shiny places all around here where the file has removed little high spots and burrs, and may make it a little more difficult for the gasket to properly seal it. So we go around and I just face this a few times. It doesn't need to be all shiny or anything like that. And then I like to just knock off the burrs off the edge of it if I can, like so, before I'm done with it. Just like that, just off the corners. Now I go over to the side of the steering gearbox, and I'm going to flat face the side of this also. So you go in different directions, keeping your fingers pushing down tightly here so that the file stays flat against it. Change directions. And we're just burnishing it lightly. That takes off any burrs and so forth that you might have there. I've prepared the seal now to go in. This is a tin can seal or a metal clad seal. Comes in the kit. They also have a rubber one that has rubber all the way around it. I like these ones a little bit better. I placed it in my tool that I've set up once again to drive the seal in. And this is a little old-fashioned Permatex, non-drying Permatex. I put that around the outside of the tin can just to make sure that it won't leak between the tin can and the cast iron box. A little bit of that around the outside of there. Also remember that this lip seal seals grease into the steering gear box. So the lips, the rubber lips, face inward, providing a barrier against the oil going out. So they're flared inward to hold the oil in. You could put this thing on backwards if you're not careful. So have a look at it and be sure that you put it in with the flared lips facing in toward the liquid that you're going to captivate. Now I'm going to use my hammer and drive this seal into the housing here on top of the needle bearing. And now I'll wipe off the excess oil that showed up there. I'm going to get a rag here and wipe off this excess oil that I put on, not oil, but Permatex. So now I'm wiping off the excess Permatex from around the outside of the seal. And I'm keeping the Permatex out here. I don't want Permatex to get inside. The lip seal now is tapering inward so that as the oil tries to come out, the seal will raise up against the smooth sector shaft and holding the oil in there on the needle bearings. So that's been wiped off now and is properly prepared on the side of the cover. Okay, we have unwrapped the new steering shaft with the worm gear on the bottom and taken off its protective coatings, and I wiped it clean with a little solvent to make sure that there was no residue on there from rust protection that they might put on it. I've slipped the roller bearing over the long shaft like so to get it ready to go up into the housing so it'll meet with the new race we installed. I put a little bit of 90 weight grease on there so that it doesn't start dry, it starts running wet like it'll be when it's installed. And I push this thing right up the column, putting my fingers into the upper portion here, way up by the steering wheel. I can feel the shaft entering, and I lift it up so that it enters the center of the upper bearing. And there it goes in, as you can see, up to the top, all the way in where it's supposed to be. It'll turn. Now I have to put the end cap in here in order for the lower bearing to be in place, and we'll adjust the play on the lower bearing end.